Marketer of the Day, number 488. The Art of Selling. Become a sales detective, build rapport, trust, and value by asking questions with sales wizard Hugh Liddle. Hey everyone, and thanks for listening. We're talking right now with Hugh Liddle, and if you want to look him up, his last name is spelled Liddle. And Hugh is the author of Take the Icky and Scary Out of Sales. You can find that on Amazon. And he is at Red Cap Sales Coaching and Elite Sales Academy. And when you go to those places, you can learn how to make selling easy, fun, and profitable. And Hugh specializes in helping chiropractors dramatically increase their conversion ratios, their sales, and their revenues. And his sales training and coaching comes from over 47 years of in-the-field sales and sales management experience. So you get real-life experience from his teaching, not just something out of a textbook. So we're going to jump right in and have all kinds of fun. So how you doing today, Hugh?
Doing mighty fine. How are you?
Better than ever. Thanks for asking. So what do people need to know these days?
Well, I think the first thing is that over the past 8 or 10 years, the art of selling has changed considerably. When I first started selling back in the early 1970s, I went to a seminar, and one of the really well-known sales trainers and motivational speakers came out on the stage, and he put his hand in his pocket and he looked out at the 5,000 or 6,000 people in the audience, and he said, "Your prospects have your money in their pockets, and your job is to do everything short of going to jail to get the money out of their pockets and into yours." And that's how selling was taught and how it was practiced for years, which is why it has such a bad name, really. When people say sales, they wrinkle their noses up and, they're kind of disgusted by the whole thing. That really has changed. The entire approach has changed to one of building relationship. And from my perspective, it's not a salesperson's job to get a prospect to do what the salesperson wants them to do or even thinks that they should do. It's a salesperson's job to help the prospect do what they want to do, to be a detective, to ask questions, and to find out what that person really wants. And then if they can give that person what they really want, they've got a new client. That's kind of how it works in a nutshell.
Super cool. So be a detective. Don't be the slimy, sleazy, pushy kind of used car salesman, telemarketer sort of thing that everyone has in their mind. And so it sounds like sort of help people and listen, right?
That's really true. A lot of people think that the main thing that a salesperson needs to have, the main skill, is being able to talk well. And actually, there are two skills that are the most important skills for a salesperson in this day and time. And those skills are asking good open-ended questions and listening very carefully with your ears, your mind, and your heart. So what the other person is having to say, keep your focus on them and find out what they think, how they feel, what their situation is, what their challenges are, what they don't want in their life anymore, what they do want in their life that they don't have. And when you do that, you'll find out what they really want. And if you can give it to them, that's awesome.
Interesting. So ask them these open-ended questions about their challenges and things like that. So that it sounds like, so it's almost like they give you the answer, or they tell you in what direction to go to.
They're the only ones who really have the answers. You don't know when you go into a sales conversation what the person needs, whether they need your product or service or not, until you have a chat with them. And I think the biggest mistake that salespeople make a lot of the time is assuming that everybody needs what they have, or assuming that everybody's going to buy what they have. And selling has, from my perspective at least, it's stopped being presentation-based, and now it's conversation-based. It's just two people sitting down and having a conversation, a friendly, upbeat conversation, and really finding out what that other person is all about. And the questions have to get down on the emotional level, though. It can't just be the surfacey stuff about facts and figures, because people have a reason why they will buy a product or service. And if they don't have that reason why, if it's not important to them, then they won't buy. And that's part of what you have to find out is how important is it that you solve this problem, or how important is it that you have this thing in your life that I have available. And if you can find that out, then the next step really is to communicate what's in it for that person to do business with you. Because every person, whether they're looking at your social media page, whether they're reading an email that you sent to them, whether they're looking at your website, whether they're in a sales conversation with you, they really have one question in their mind. And that is, what's in it for me? What's in it for me if I connect with this person? What's in it for me if I answer this email? What's in it for me if I buy this person's product or service? How's it going to help me? How's it going to make my life better or easier or more productive or more profitable? What's in it for me? So when you answer that question, what most salespeople, and unfortunately even what most marketers do, is they say, well, we have this and we do this, and I can help you do whatever. And the worst one of all from my perspective is my passion is helping people do this or that. Because listen, nobody gives a rip what your passion is. They care about their passion. They care about what's important to them. So use you statements. You can have, you can do, you can be, you can enjoy, you can take advantage of. All of those kinds of things. And that directly answers the question in their mind, what's in it for me? Well, you can have this, you can do this, you can learn this, you can enjoy this. And so really scripting out your sales conversation so that you're asking all of your questions open-ended, and so that you're using you statements when you're explaining what's in it for them are two of the really important things.
Awesome. And this is really great stuff. And what's really interesting about some of these tweaks that you mentioned is, I don't know if maybe when I was younger, I was more immature, or I was hanging out with the wrong crowd of marketers. But for whatever reason, maybe 10 years ago or so, I didn't care about the emotional stuff. And now it seems like the most important thing. And it seems like, 10 plus years ago, whenever there was like something I was going to buy, I'd look at the features and I'd be like, ooh, I'll buy it based on that thing and stuff like that. And whenever it got into the happy, fuzzy, emotional stuff, I sort of tuned it out. But I noticed that back then that was when everyone else was perking up. And so I don't know what sort of transformation happened, but now these sort of things are really, I'm really taking these sorts of things to heart about, what's in it for me, and the you statements, and especially like you said a few minutes ago, the how important is it that you solve blank. So not just buy this website or buy this plugin or buy this computer program. That's okay, but you need to solve this thing, and you need to solve it right now. And how important is it that you need to solve that? Okay, so it's really important. Now you need to buy this thing. So some of these things, I just gotta say, like, I used to not pay attention to the emotional stuff or what's in it for me. I just kind of looked at it on the surface, like features versus benefits. But now that I've maybe seen it enough, I'm not sure, but this is really making a lot more sense to me these days.
Folks, you're listening to a really smart marketer right now.
Awesome. Flattery will get you everywhere.
He's got it, and there's no doubt about it. Let me tell you a story about a prospect that I had, back about 2 years ago. And I was talking with her about how she wanted her business to look in a year. And she said, well, I want to be earning $250,000. And I said, great. What's important to you about $250,000? She said, well, if I have $250,000 a year coming in, I can quit my job and just do my business all the time. I said, oh, well, what's important to you about being able to leave your job? And she said, well, and then she stopped for a minute. It was real quiet for a minute. And she burst into tears. And she said, I have a little grandson, and both of his parents work. And I get to take care of him only one day a week because I have to work the rest of the week. And if I could just work in my business, if I just had enough income coming in from my business, I could spend all the time I wanted to with my grandson, and they're expecting another baby, so I'm going to have a granddaughter too, and I want to spend my time with them and just work when I'm not taking care of them. And I can't do that on a regular job, but I can do that if I get my business big enough. Well, see, just by asking those questions, what's important to you about? That's a great open-ended question. Anytime that you don't have enough information and you're not quite sure what's motivating somebody, just keep asking that. Well, what's important to you about that? And when I finally hit that emotional place, that's why she bought. She didn't buy because I told her, oh, you can have $250,000 in income. It wasn't the $250,000 that in income that was important. It was spending time with her grandkids. So that's what I talked to her about. You really can, over a relatively brief period of time, build your income and your business to that level so that you can go take care of those grandkids and play with them and enjoy them and watch them grow up, and it's just going to be fabulous. And that's why she bought. She didn't buy because of the money. She bought because of the time she could spend with her grandkids.
Interesting. And did I hear you correctly in that sometimes it takes maybe 2, 3, 4, 5 layers to get through to get to the real meat of the stuff?
It really does. Yeah. You just keep asking questions until you hit that emotional time. And the way that you can tell when you hit the emotional thing is that the energy will change. You'll either see them tear up, you'll see them perk up, you'll see a sparkle in their eye. They get excited or they get really emotional about whatever it is that they really want. And you see, people don't buy what they need. They buy what they want. And that's a really important thing to keep in mind. When you can find out what somebody really wants and you can help them get that, or you can give that to them, as long as they can afford you, you have a new client. That's where the rubber meets the road, right there. When you reach that emotional point, that's it.
I love it. And so sort of along those lines here, as far as like, getting them to that point and, getting into the position of, well, you figured out what they want and you have it. So now there's a deal to be worked out. Something that, I don't know if it's like something that I'm seeing in myself, or maybe, I don't know if it's even a real issue, but it feels to me like, as far back as I can remember, as far as like the selling situation, it seems like sometimes I maybe don't leave customers thirsty enough, whether that's like a one-on-one phone call, like I've been ramping that up lately, or I've been doing webinars for the past 10 years, same kind of thing. Like, it's not a matter of, I don't necessarily like dump a bunch of things on there, but sometimes it seems like in this sort of conversation, we flesh out a few of what their problems are, and then sometimes I solve a few of their problems, and it feels almost as if they don't really need me as much, or they think they're gonna go off and solve it on their own. So am I just crazy, or is this a real issue of feeling like maybe we haven't left people thirsty enough?
If you have people leaving and going off to do it themselves, it means that you're giving them too much detail. And once again, in a sales conversation, it's not our job to educate people. I don't tell people everything that's involved in selling or everything that's involved in the process of getting sales coaching, because nobody wants sales coaching anyway. What they want is a result. So I'm asking questions to find out what is it that they want? What do they want to happen? What do they want their practice to look like or their business to look like? And if I can help them do that, if I can help them do something like that, that's what's going to really encourage them to buy. They're going to buy the result, not the process. It's kind of like, I love sausage. I really do. It's one of my favorite things, and I don't care how it's made. I don't care what's in it. I don't give a rip. I love the way it tastes. When it hits my tongue, and boy, my taste buds just jump up and beat my brains out, I absolutely love it. And so I want the result. I don't want the process. I don't even want the ingredients. So if you're talking to somebody, for example, about marketing, what kind of result will your prospect receive if they choose to work with you on their marketing? What's going to happen to their business? What's going to happen to their visibility? How's the phone going to ring more, or more people visit their website, or more people interact on their website? How are more people going to find them on Google? And those are the results that they're looking for. That's what they want. And so you don't need to tell them how they're going to get there. You just need to ask them how they feel about trusting you to make their phone ring, to get more people to their website, to have more visibility on social media. Whatever it is that's important to them, ask them how they'd feel about trusting you to do that. And if they really want that badly, and you tell them, hey, you know what, you can have that. It's possible.
I like that phrasing a lot. How do you feel about trusting me to do that? And so, I guess just to sort of further clarify a little bit, like, well, what would you do if a prospect maybe tried to work in a couple of like questions? Like if you said, well, here's this result I promised, but maybe they know a little bit about that process and they kind of try to work in some specific things, and then you're in a situation where you're like, well, do I like ignore the question? Do I change the conversation? Do I answer it a little bit? What do you do if someone kind of comes at you with a few specific things?
A lot of that depends on the person's social style. If you have somebody who's really analytical, you're probably going to give them a really detailed answer because they need that in order to make a decision. But the best thing to do if somebody asks you a question is to ask a question in return. And that question is, what's important to you about social media? Or what's important to you about doing that? I'll tell you another little story. Little Johnny was outside playing with his friends, and his dad, it was a Saturday, and his dad was sitting in the lazy boy wearing the hair off the back of his head reading a newspaper. And Johnny came running in, and he ran up to Dad's chair, and he said, "Dad, can I ask you a question?" Dad said, "Sure, Johnny." And Johnny said, "Dad, where did I come from?" And Dad's sitting there thinking, holy smokes, this kid's only 5 years old, and he's already asking me that. And he thought, well, kids get real sophisticated nowadays really quick, so I want him to have the right information. I better tell him. So he spent 45 minutes telling little Johnny all the details, where everything was, what it was used for, how it all worked. He got done, and he said, "Now, Johnny, do you understand what Dad just said?" And Johnny said, "Yeah, I think so." And he said, "Well, Johnny, why did you ask me about where you came from?" And Johnny said, "Well, I was outside playing with Tommy, and he said he came from Chicago, and I was just wondering where I came from." See, sometimes we tell people way more than they ever need to know or ever want to know. And if Johnny's dad had asked the question that he asked at the end beforehand, he could have just said, "Well, Johnny, you were born in Phoenix." And Johnny would have been perfectly satisfied. So if you find out what they want to know or what prompted them to ask the question, it could be, "Oh, I don't know. Well, I was just curious." And you can just give them a real brief answer. "Yeah, that's part of what you can have if you work with us." Or you can give them a little bit of detail, or if they're really analytical and they say, "Well, I just have to know how it all works before I make a decision," then you give them enough detail that they know how it's all going to work.
I love it. So there are different types of answers.
Sure.
Well, cool.
It's a conversation.
So do you think that with all these businesses that you work with, do you think that are they all missing the boat on one particular thing? Is it a matter of like, are they not talking to enough prospects? Is there not enough follow-up going on? Is there just anything that you're seeing that's really jumping out at you lately as far as what people are missing out on?
I think the main thing is that most business people, if they're having a challenge with sales, they think that it's closing, or I don't even call it closing. I call it asking for the sale. And they think that that's the problem, that that's the main thing. And the challenge really is for them, not the ask for the sale. The ask for the sale piece is really, really easy. It's like falling off a log if you've done 4 other things really well. And so if you haven't asked good questions and you don't know really what they want, you can ask them for the sale and the answer is almost always going to be no. You can spend a whole lot of time bragging about how great you are and how great your business is and, blah, 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 and ask them for the sale. And if you haven't told them what's in it for them, they're not going to buy. If you haven't done a really good job of building rapport at the beginning and they don't feel like they know you, like you, and trust you, you could ask them for the sale and the answer is probably going to be no. If you haven't done a really good verbal agreement at the beginning and they're still uptight and waiting for the other shoe to drop and waiting for you to get nasty and try to pressure them, chances are they're going to say no when you ask them to buy. So you've got to do the whole process, and it is a process that you go through to have a successful sales conversation.
What's the process?
Well, the process is build rapport, your verbal agreement, good open-ended questions, your value statements, your you statements, ask for the sale, answer objections.
You make it sound so simple.
It is when you have a good script and when you have that script memorized and you make it your own and you're totally confident when you go into that sales conversation. It is easy.
So, I mean, yeah, you make it sound so great here. So, if people out here are looking to either get into selling with their business or hire someone to do it or up their game or just, do more of some of this great stuff that you're mentioning, I mean, what do you recommend is the plan of action here? That they go out and use this process and make a bunch of calls and get better over time? Or how does someone go from nothing to being super good at selling and on the phone and all that stuff?
Well, I think the first thing that's necessary is that they have to identify their ideal prospect, their ideal client, and figure out where those people hang out. And this is sort of the marketing piece of it, so you're very familiar with it. And just finding out how to connect with those people and start a conversation. And as you build relationship with people online or offline, you get to the point where you can ask them to have a conversation about their business and talk business with them, have a sales conversation with them. And then it's all about knowing what to say, when to say it, and how to say it.
Awesome. So start with those fundamentals and identify that ideal client, find out where they hang out, figure out how to connect, and just start a conversation and get to talking to hear their needs and find out how you can help them. I mean, it's at this in one side of things, it makes perfect sense. It seems really simple, but it also sounds like maybe there are some. It's easy to forget some of these things, right? And it's easy to forget that. To have that verbal agreement or to establish rapport, it's easy to just kind of rush into things here. And I imagine that by kind of having that foundation or having some kind of ongoing help to figure all that out can make things a lot smoother. And I know that you have a iTunes show called Sales Chalk Talk, and you have this Kindle book. So can you maybe tell us about some of these resources that you have? So if people's interest, curiosity is piqued today and they say, well, all this makes sense, and the stuff that Hugh threw out here, I like it and I see how it can work, but maybe I need some kind of a more concrete plan, or I need something to revisit. So, I mean, what sort of resources and links do you have for us today?
Well, here's the place where I think folks can start and then branch out to some of the other kinds of resources. For the listeners of your show, if you would like to have a 1-hour conversation with me or with one of the other sales wizards at Redcap Sales Coaching, you can go to bit.ly, that's bit.ly/wizard-strategy. And that 1-hour conversation, there isn't any charge for it. There's absolutely no obligation to do anything else. There's not any pressure whatsoever. It's just an opportunity to talk about your business, your sales, the challenge that you're having, ask questions, and you'll get some really good sales tips and ideas and strategies during the conversation. And at the end of the conversation, if sales coaching is something that you think would be a benefit to you, we could talk about how to do that, how to arrange that, or we could send you to a book. We could send you to the online program, elitesalesacademy.com. There's just a number of different resources that you can have, but without having a conversation first and finding out what's going on for you and what you need and what the situation is, I couldn't even start to recommend a specific thing. You mentioned Sales Chalk Talk, and that's a really awesome program because we're interviewing people from different walks of life, from different kinds of businesses, about sales, marketing, business, and success. We've had some really famous people on, like Tom Hopkins and Jim Cathcart and Bob Berg and Tony Alessandra, and we've had a whole bunch of people on that aren't that well known. But if you go back and just listen to the past episodes of that show, you'll get a whole ton of really, really great stuff about sales, marketing, business, and success. So you can find that at bit.ly/SCT for Sales Chalk Talk, SCT-iTunes. And that's all lowercase. If you try to capitalize the T in tunes, you won't get to the right place. So it's bit.ly/SCT-iTunes. But really, I think the first place that you would probably want to go is just to arrange a sales conversation with a red cap sales coach and just find out whether it's a good fit for you or whether it's not.
Super great advice, and that's very low pressure. And so it sounds like the plan of action from this point forward is first go to bit.ly/wizard-strategy and fill that out, get your 1-hour consultation booked on the schedule, and then only after doing that, so while you're waiting for the time to pass between now and when that appointment happens, maybe go over to bit.ly/STC-iTunes, so that way you can subscribe to the podcast, you can listen to some of those great interviews, and you know what, Hugh? All this is making perfect sense, especially because it sounds like you practice what you preach, and it's really easy to say, oh, well, you could go to this or go to that, but I've definitely fallen into that trap of being like, okay, I want to know about this thing, but then someone gave me, just one place to go, and I'm like, oh, I don't know if that's right for me, or given 10 places to go, and I'm like, I don't know, I'm confused. So what you said makes perfect sense, where people should have that conversation with you. That way, once you've heard about their needs and wants and desires and all those different things, then once you have a better picture of where they're at, where they want to go, then you can just, based on what you know, point them over in that right direction. And because I definitely can relate to maybe listening to a podcast and listening to different episodes and maybe getting some ideas or maybe like tips or things to try, but not a real plan of action. And then I've also sometimes, bought a course just for the heck of it and then said, well, I bought this course, but I didn't really finish it. So, I mean, this is all, checking all the boxes, making perfect sense that they should go to bit.ly/wizard-strategy. That way they have a conversation with you and then you point them the way to where to go.
Right. And I do want to mention, too, that you mentioned at the top of the show that I work with chiropractors, and that's true. Most of my clients are chiropractors. We do also work with any service-oriented business, anything from coaches to marketing companies to heating and air conditioning companies. Anybody that's a service-oriented kind of business could really profit from doing some sales coaching, or at least having a conversation and finding out whether sales coaching is something they want and need.
Super fantastic. So if you fall under any of those categories, chiropractors, HVAC, coaches, services, whatever, then still contact Richard and get that appointment on the books. That way you can see if he and his team can help you, especially because they've done it. They've done it for that specific type of person. So see if you're a good fit, and we'll see you over there. One last time, bit.ly/wizard-strategy. So thanks so much, Hugh, for stopping by and sharing a lot of these interesting stories to make a point, and for being real with us and telling us about those things that we need to know, what we need to do to up our game, to connect better, and to, I guess most importantly, stop making all these dang mistakes when it comes to selling. So thanks for that, and I appreciate you.
My pleasure, and it was really fun. Thanks for having me on.
Please follow me on Twitter at twitter.com/RobertPlank. That's twitter.com/RobertPlank. And while you're adding me, also like Marketer of the Day on Facebook by going to facebook.com/RobertPlankShow.